Amid an ongoing large-scale regional war and intense negotiations over the fate of the Islamic Republic of Iran's nuclear weapons program, it's appropriate to examine the origins of this persistent effort at nuclear proliferation. This video will explain when Iran's nuclear weapons program began, the reasons it decided to pursue nuclear weapons, and cover the first 2 decades of the program's development. It's my hope that this video will give you a firm understanding of the early history of Iran's effort to make a nuclear bomb and enable you to be a more informed observer of the high-stakes struggle to bring the program to an end. Iran's nuclear weapons program began before the Islamic Revolution happened, under the government of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. In 1967, Iran entered into a contract with the United States of America and the International Atomic Energy Agency to build a 5-megawatt research reactor in Tehran. This was done under the American Cold War-era Atoms for Peace program established by the Eisenhower administration. The agreement specified that the reactor was to be used only for peaceful purposes, primarily to create isotopes of radioactive elements useful for medical applications. Under the agreement, the United States agreed to provide Iran with 5.58 kilograms of 93% highly enriched uranium, which indicates the concentration of the fissile isotope uranium-235, as fuel for the reactor, along with 4 grams of 90% highly enriched uranium as indicator material and 112 grams of plutonium as special fissionable material. The total cost of these materials was just over $67,000, or nearly $700,000 in today's money. In 1970, Iran was one of the original countries to sign the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. It agreed not to manufacture or otherwise acquire nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices, and not to seek or receive any assistance in the manufacture of nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices. By 1974, the Shah endeavored to dramatically expand Iran's nuclear energy program. He oversaw the creation of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran and began negotiations with several countries concerning the creation of nuclear power plants. The Shah sought to procure between 12 and 20 nuclear reactors to fulfill his goal of producing 23,000 megawatts of electrical power within 20 years. That summer, Iran began negotiations with France to build a nuclear plant in Iran as a joint venture. France agreed to sell Iran 2 910-megawatt reactors built by the French company Framatome. They also established a joint venture to exploit uranium deposits in Iran, as well as the Isfahan Nuclear Research Center. As part of the agreement, Iran invested $1 billion in the French Eurodif uranium enrichment plant. Iran received a 10% share in the company and a promise that it would receive a portion of the enriched uranium as fuel for its reactors. At the same time, Iran made a deal with the West German company Kraftwerk Union to build another nuclear power plant at Bushehr. The plant was to be powered by 2 1,200-megawatt reactors, with construction well underway by the late 1970s. During this period of nuclear expansion, the Shah initiated research into the production of nuclear weapons. In 1974, he publicly expressed interest in eventually developing nuclear weapons, only to backtrack shortly afterward, declaring that Iran would not seek them unless other countries in the region did so first. Iran's program began in secret at the Tehran Research Center, where it pursued several methods of producing material for a bomb. In 1975, Iran began a program to enrich uranium through the process of laser isotope separation, in which the useful isotope uranium-235 is isolated and removed from the more prevalent uranium-238. By October of 1978, Iran had 3 lasers capable of enriching uranium. Iran also attempted to buy both highly enriched uranium and plutonium during this period, but were unsuccessful in finding anyone willing to sell. In the mid-1970s, Iran had approached the United States about acquiring a plutonium reprocessing plant. However, the American government worried about its nuclear proliferation implications and rejected the move. The Islamic Revolution in 1979 brought all of these efforts to a halt. Iran canceled its contracts with France and Germany and demanded that France return the billion-dollar investment Iran had made in Eurodif. France refused, leading to years of friction between the two governments. Production stopped on all the power plant reactors. The French reactors had just started construction, while the German ones were 60 and 75% complete. Only the Tehran research reactor remained active. Iran's stalled nuclear program emboldened Iraq, which had a more advanced active nuclear weapons program. In 1980, Saddam Hussein's forces invaded Iran, starting an 8-year-long war that would revive Iran's nuclear weapons program. In October of 1982, the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini decided to restart Iran's nuclear weapons program. The Speaker of Parliament, Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, had convinced the Ayatollah of the program's necessity. He argued that a nuclear weapon would give Iran prestige and could end the war with Iraq. It would also provide a deterrent against future attacks like the one that had been initiated by Saddam Hussein. Simultaneously, Iran determined to restart work on its nuclear power plant, as they sought to increase the supply of cheap energy in preparation for a long war. Iran would use its oil revenues to fund these programs. The regime moved quickly to resume the weapons program. Iran began by restarting the uranium enrichment effort using laser isotope separation. In 1983, they even hosted a conference on the subject. Then in 1985, the regime initiated a centrifuge enrichment program in Tehran. In this process, uranium hexafluoride gas is spun through a cylinder, separating more of the fissile uranium-235 from uranium-238. The uranium is then sent through more centrifuges, called a cascade, progressively increasing the concentration of uranium-235 by a small amount each time. Uranium becomes weapons grade when it reaches 90% enrichment. However, the Iranians lacked technical experience with the process and were far from enriching uranium to weapons grade. As a result, the regime sought assistance on the black market from a network run by Pakistani nuclear physicist Abdul Qadir Khan, a leading figure in his home country's nuclear weapons program. In 1987, the Khan network sold Iran 1 or 2 disassembled centrifuges, as well as planning materials with which they could build more. Iran also received a 15-page document containing details related to the construction of a nuclear weapon. As the weapons program progressed, the regime worked to restart the nuclear energy program. Iran sought international assistance to finish the Bushehr nuclear power plant, but initially received no support, even from the Soviet Union. After construction resumed in 1984, Iran received assistance from Argentina's National Atomic Energy Commission, the CNEA, which had experience working with the original builder's Kraftwerk Union. However, progress was significantly hindered by the ongoing war. Iraq perceived the Bushehr reactors as significant targets and attacked the plant multiple times throughout the war. In 1984, satellite imagery provided by the United States revealed extensive Iranian defenses around the facility, including anti-aircraft artillery and a Hawk missile battery. Iraq's Scud missiles lacked the range to hit the plant, but Iraqi Super Etendard strike fighters were capable of executing an attack using modified Exocet missiles. On March 24th, 4 jets took off from Iraq. Once they were 20 miles from the target, the fighters turned on their radars and fired at the plant. They quickly returned to Iraq, where they waited to learn the results of the strike. American intelligence indicated that the attack had caused only moderate damage to surrounding facilities. Iraq struck the Bushehr plant 6 more times during the war. Twice in 1985, once in 1986, twice in 1987, and one final time in 1988. The strike in November of 1986 did the most damage. 2 Iraqi Mirage F-1 fighters, armed with ASL-30L laser-guided bombs, hit the dome of one of the reactors, causing $4 billion worth of damage and halting construction. During the war, Iran used hostages to coerce France into paying back the $1 billion investment the Shah had made into Eurodif. Iran was also implicated in the assassination of Georges Best, the CEO of Renault, who had been a key figure opposed to nuclear cooperation with Iran on November 17, 1986. The attack was likely in retaliation for France's unwillingness to provide the regime with enriched uranium as part of the deal. In 1988, Argentina's CNEA agreed to modify the Tehran research reactor to run using 20% highly enriched uranium as the fuel. Toward the end of the year, Iran signed an agreement with Argentina giving them 115.8 kilograms of uranium enriched to 20%. Under the agreement, Iran pledged it would not use the nuclear material for weapons production. Since then, Iran has used providing fuel for the Tehran research reactor as an excuse for its nuclear enrichment efforts. With the end of the Iran-Iraq War in 1988, Iran conducted further work on its nuclear weapons program. Over the next 4 years, the regime irradiated 7 grams of depleted uranium dioxide, 3 kilograms of which were used to produce 200 micrograms of separated plutonium. By the early 1990s, the Iranian government was pursuing multiple pathways to a nuclear bomb. However, they had received minimal support, and progress was slow. Analysts estimated that Iran was unlikely to have any nuclear capability until the mid-90s, and no delivery mechanism until after the new millennium. Over the past 3 decades, Iran has persisted in developing its nuclear weapons program, despite repeated public claims that it has no interest developing nuclear weapons. Many nations view Iran's clandestine program as a significant threat to their national security. These decisions have led us to the current war, as the United States seeks to bring an end to the nuclear ambitions it helped initiate long ago.